due to our own good fortune, we've been able to do it in 4 years plus a little bit of interest. What I would like to just let the town meeting make a note of is that the FinCom made a conclusion on page 7 of the warrant. And I'd like to quote from that. It says, "In conclusion, we have taken another step closer to completely exhausting our savings account with no foreseeable means of replenishing them. This brings us closer to the inevitable decision of serious reductions in services, budget cuts, or a general override of Proposition 2.5. Now, you spoke earlier, Mr. Walsh, about putting the money towards town services and to reduce taxes. If you look at our budget on the following pages, we started off on Article number 10, page number 19. Go into the next couple of pages, page 21, 23, up into 25. If you look at the following pages, what we're doing is we're not funding the government as it is now. We're increasing the size of government. Look throughout this area, and you'll see that we've created 4 or 5 new positions. Some of them are supposedly funded at a new position at $13,000, another one at $36,000, another one that we've made the newspaper at approximately $46,000 to $52,000. Go back to the beginning of the voter checklist inside the front cover. And what it says is, this is from the FinCom, it gives a checklist of what we should be spending money on. Is it necessary? Can we afford it? What will it ultimately cost? How will it affect our basic liberties? Is it in the best balanced interest of all? Is it a foot in the door proposition? And does it place too much power in the hands of one individual or group? And it is based on emotional propaganda of facts. The point that I try to make about this is that what we're doing with this money, if you follow the rest of the articles, is we're not funding general government. You're not going to save 5 cents on your taxes. What this has done is to expand the size of general government so that we'll have to, next year and the following year, continue to pay for these increased sizes of government. Government's not getting smaller, and through this enlargement of the town government, there is no guarantee of efficiency, which will save you tax money. This proposal that you see, wherever the town meeting decides to put the money in stabilization, it doesn't make any difference to me. The point is, before we spend, through the report given to the FinCom, from free cash, stabilization, and Hillview monies will be used to balance the budget. It doesn't say increase the size of it, but that's what this budget entails. And it will continue from that point on to 1994, approximately $500,000 a year. From now on, all the money that goes in there won't save you any tax money. What we have to do first, in my opinion, is to stop the increasing size of the town government and get your money's worth before you spend any more money. We're throwing money at the problem, and we're not attacking the problem. We need results, and we don't really need to spend any more money into the town government.
Mr. Mocheri. Mr. Mocheri.
I just wanted to point out that the monies that were loaned to the Hillview came out of stabilization, and it required a 2/3 vote to move the money into their domain.
Mr. Jervie.
I have a question for, I think, the Finance Committee. It was my impression that this was going into stabilization in part so that it would become immediately available to town meeting, whereas if it were to go into free cash, it would have to wait until it had been certified by the Department of Revenue, and this town meeting would not have access to it.
Mr. Dodge.
The answer to the state's question, we believe, is yes. Right now, our belief is the fact that if you transfer it into stabilization, we will have access to that money tonight in this town meeting. If we transfer the funds into what's called the general fund, it appears that it would have to be certified as free cash at the end of the fiscal year, this fiscal year, which means that at the end of each fiscal year, the state certifies the amount of funds we have available. That means the funds would not be available until October town meeting. Now, I used a lot of fuzzy words like I believe, I should have said, I think. Because believe me, this has been a question that we've been chasing for several months. We've gone around and around in circles. We've gotten different opinions at different times. I think that right now, as a Finance Committee member, I have to lean towards what the Department of Revenue told us straight out. The Department of Revenue told us, you put it into stabilization, you can use it at that town meeting. I mean, this is going to be a question. Wait till we start talking about the future monies to come out of the Hillview. It's going to get even more interesting. But I believe the best place to put it is into stabilization. And if you want to change the questions later on and about the 2/3 funding and to put the money into something like pensions and benefit or something to use up, or to use the stabilization money into those areas, you can do that as well. But my personal belief is the best place to put it right now with the least amount of questions or issues is going to be into stabilization.
You have a quick follow-up, Mr. Walsh?
Just about 1 minute there. First and foremost, I want to say this. I'm reminded of the remark my little son told me the first day he came home from kindergarten, and I asked him how he liked school. He says, it isn't school I objected, Dad, it's the principle of the thing. Secondly, I don't argue about needing money and all these other kinds of things, but I want to point out to you again, we had a little big fiasco this past year with the school, high school committee that put the amounts of money to the appropriation for funding the high school, where the board of selectmen decided how to pay off the debt, and then the high school committee came back and said, hey, that's not the way the town voted. So all I'm saying is, so everything comes around and goes around. And I really think that if you need the money in the stabilization fund, then I think you should ask for as a different appropriation. Let us vote on that. Let's not start transferring from Hillview to stabilization, setting precedents. Next month, you're going to want to take it from the water utilization fund and put it in stabilization.
Mr. Dodge?
Just to answer that point, we could not take it from the water and put it into stabilization. The point that needs to be made is the fact that if we, as town meeting, did not put up that $200,000 4 years ago as feed money to the Hillview, we would not be able to transfer this money into stabilization. This is a payback, simple as that.
Mr. Bellows?
Paul Billows, 175 North Street. Mr. Moderator, there's been some remarks about, several remarks about Hillview, and I just would like to set the record straight. When the proposal for the acquisition of Hillview was made, it was to protect the aquifer, the open space. The monies that came from Hillview, or have come from Hillview, go to the town. And Hillview is not mine, it's not the Hillview Commission's, it is ours. And that's very important not to lose sight of that. It is ours. And it will remain ours, hopefully, indefinitely. Now, as far as the monies from Hillview's going into stabilization, I don't really oppose that. I do, for a couple of reasons, suggest that there should be serious questions as to whether we should do it now. And the questions basically were have risen because of things that the Finance Committee has said. The traditional concept of stabilization is, as the gentleman stated before, for capital projects. In my mind, that seems to be an appropriate use for the funds. Now, Mr. Dodge, I believe it was, says that stabilization is being used, and I think I'm quoting him, for operations. And that next year we're going to have the same problem, but I don't believe we're going to have the same funding next year. So now, if we put this into stabilization, why are we doing it this year? There's money in stabilization, so what it is, it's a swap-off. You take some of stabilization that's there right now, and you replenish it with stabilization. But it's a utilization of stabilization money for purposes of our operating capital. Now, Mr. Walsh, previous speaker, said that there are jobs that are being created. This is not level funding government. There are jobs that are being created, and these monies will be used to fund these jobs. Where's the money going to come from next year? I think at some point this town and our town officials have got to bite the bullet. And the most cogent thing that was said by Mr. Dodge, and he posed questions, and I would like to hear answers to the questions. There were two questions he said. We need a plan. We need to know where we are going. And the second one is what's not being done. And I urge the town administrator or the Board of Selectmen or someone to answer those questions before we start earmarking this money for stabilization at this time.
Gentleman in the rear, please state your name and address, sir.
James Brophy, 21 Marshall Street. I've heard comments about payback. Several years ago, when the town invested the money into Hillview, and that investment has done very well, can the town take that investment and reinvest it instead of using it for day-to-day expenses, and that reinvestment allow that to grow so that the town in the future will be a better place to live?
Mr. Venezia.
Again, Mr. Walsh, current chairman of the Hillview, and Mr. Billows, a member of the Hillview and former chairman, have made reference to various line items in this budget. I certainly hope that the people that are here tonight who are going to vote on Article 9 and whether or not to transfer this money in stabilization will stay here and discuss at the appropriate time each line item of this budget to see if in fact there is waste, to see if in fact there are monies that they're not in favor of appropriating. I think to vote on Article 9 and then not to sit here and go through the budget line item by line item is irresponsible. I really do. And we have spent the time, the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen, reviewing this budget. We spent 6 consecutive Saturdays. We spent meetings during the week. We spent our own time at home trying to establish a budget that was responsible. The monies that we're asking to transfer back, whether it's stabilization or free cash, is monies that were advanced in the first place to the Hillview. It's not so-called surplus money from the Hillview. Next year, maybe there will be surplus money, but this is money that essentially is owed back to the town. And again, I think if people in this audience have a problem with various line items, they should stay here and they should vote on those line items, and they should be discussed at that time. Thank you.
Gentleman in the center, please state your name and address, sir.
Joey Fitzgerald, Ashwood Drive. Mr. Moderator, I believe that we planted a seed at Hillview, and we are about to reap the first harvest. At this point, I don't think we should gobble up the first harvest. I think we should continue to reinvest it and let it be our legacy to our children and to their children. Thank you.
Ms. Mullen. Mr. Dodge.
I have to put up one of my busy charts again here. As far as right now, if you follow the FinCom recommendations, this is the amount of money that we would have remaining in stabilization. Okay? Some of the issues that are coming up before us are the two main ones that we pretty much know the dollar amounts of line items within the omnibus budget. One is compensation change within the town budget, which would be money there for, well, actually both line items are called two different things, but there's money there for negotiations for increases for the different unions and the employees of the town. Right now, the Finance Committee is not recommending those line items. As you see, that sums up to about a total of $173,000. That leaves us short basically about, what, $30,000 from those two line items. The other issue is, and believe me, I haven't had, nor has the Finance Committee had time to consider the arbitration that was just settled with the firefighters union, but we